online assessment for many years. So one of the things we're going to hear about now is how do you actually extend this into different types of assessments that you can do in the online environment. So over to the three amigos. What do you have?
Okay, so wonderful to be here and really exciting again to hear the amazing work that you've been doing, and some of the points that we're going to talk about today build on some of the ideas that you've raised. But before we dive in, just taking a step back, reflecting educationally, what are our aims? And in higher education, two general sort of theoretical reference that sort of we can aspire to is this idea from Dave Jonassen, the late great Dave Jonassen, of meaningful learning that's active, intentional, authentic, cooperative, constructive. And also from Tom Reeves, Jan Harrington, we've got this idea of authentic learning, that we've got authentic contexts and activities, expert performance is required, different roles and perspectives, reflection, collaboration, articulation, but also importantly in that list, which has been something that's quite difficult to achieve, is this integrated, authentic assessment. And if you think traditionally about what's been the case in higher education, in terms of the constructive alignment that Gabriel was talking about, traditionally, for centuries, we've had this idea that outcomes were sort of more academic, abstract, sort of knowledge and skills. The tasks were more bookwork-natured tasks, and the assessment was essays and multiple choice questions. And then it was great. We realised, well, we need to move beyond that to have more authentic learning, where the things that we're shooting for are situated and industry relevant and digital. But then the tasks were still bookwork tasks and the assessments were still traditionally oriented. Then there was a shift towards greater sort of software use and modelling in the classroom and programming and these sorts of digital tasks. But still, we've been constrained by the sort of assessments that we set to sort of the essays and multiple choice questions. So really, this is the last frontier, I guess, of constructive alignments. This idea that in the 21st century, with authentic problem-solving capabilities, we want to have digital tasks that relate very much towards our outcomes and tasks. So what I'd like you to do, because we haven't had a chance to talk with one another yet, I'm going to give you just a few minutes in your groups. What I want you to do is think of, in your discipline area, what the best example of an authentic digital task would be for the discipline area that you're interested in learning and teaching. And then in your group, within that 3 minutes still, so you're going to have to brainstorm pretty quick, I'd like you to come up with the best example from your table of a really authentic digital assessment task that you could run. 3 minutes starting now. 1 minute warning, pick your best example from your table. 1 minute warning, and then we're going to do shout-outs. Shout-outs coming. Okay, your time is up. Ready or not? What I'm going to do is just point to a table, and I just want someone, nominate quickly someone who's going to do the shout out. It's just going to be like a sentence of your best example of an authentic digital assessment task, okay? And we'll sort of wind around the room that way. So let's start down here. What was your best example?
Did you plan that?
Yeah, well, I thought I'd pick on you, Geoff.
Online role plays. So we had an example at a previous university I was at, University of Adelaide, did for the civil engineers, was an online role play that actually ran through the whole semester, and each of the engineers were put in, the students were put into groups. They all were given a persona as part of that, and the problem, if any of you have ever know about this, have seen this one, it's the building of the dam across the Mekong River.
Great. Okay, shout out. Next table. Maybe, I'm not even sure if we'll have time for microphones, even if people have loud voices. Yeah, shout it out.
One of the things we do is give students data sets and then get them to create visual insights out of them.
Fantastic. Visualizations from data sets. Next table.
Medicine and other health professionals, we do a lot of workplace assessments in clinical assessments, in clinical settings, so using a smartphone app to capture that and feed that data back into a new portfolio.
Very interesting. Great variety coming through. Next table.
We take marine science students over to an island on the Barrier Reef, and on the trip over on the boat, they learn to skipper the boat, and we assess them against that and get a skipper license. So.
Wow, boat licenses digitally. Next table at the back. We can do microphones if you've got time. Yep.
We had a design course where we had iterative submission using the Adobe suite, and then the end production was a six-pack box which was posted in to the assessor. So it was a physical product but a digital process.
Great. Next table, please. And we'll use the microphone so it does get captured on the recording.
Okay, I'm from Monash. We've got Integrating Science and Practice. It's a 5-stage case-based program run through Moodle. The students given a scenario. We run it across 5 disciplines. They have a fixed period of time to come up with their approach to the embedded professional issues. They then get released. They upload what they would have done, either themselves, in groups, in teams. Then the experts come online. We've recorded, or it's visual, it's oral, it's written. Then they have to think about what the expert group have said they would have done in that situation. And then the final stage of the learning process is to commit to what have I learnt from this in the comparative report. We have 160 odd cases, and we're across 3 faculties now.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next table.
I'll just make this an easy one. Computer programming, so students don't have to write code on paper.
Yes. Oh, round of applause. Thank you. Yeah. Next table.
Well, you've just stolen ours. But, we do a lot of things with schools, and again, another design one. The students have a design problem, create a prototype, create a video talking about their prototype, and show that. So it's digitised in that one.
Very nice idea, because there's been a lot that I've heard of, people using videos in a receptive way, but what about in a creative way? Very interesting. We'll go down to this table here.
As part of an e-exam, our students have to, it's teacher education, they have to write a letter home to their parents, and so it's time constrained, but hey, teachers are time constrained, so it's fairly authentic.
Interesting.
Ken from CQU. We had a scenario where one of our legal areas to get students to assess how students understood, how interviews should take place in a legal setting. A VR experience was created with an avatar walking in as a client, being interviewed, and students then had to evaluate that. One of the advantages of this was that every student could be evaluated on a similar setting.
Same situation.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's been the year of VR, so the VR possibilities with authentic assessment and online exams is huge. Next table.
I'm from the University of Melbourne, and in law, our Juris Doctor students use a software called HiQ, which is used in a lot of the major firms, and they work in teams and they work through a real-world case. And basically, they don't do a final exam in that subject. All their assessment is done through that software, so they have to work through that case, liaise with clients, and all those sorts of activities that they would have to do in a real-world legal environment, and they're assessed on that using that software.
Fantastic. And last but not least.
Yeah, ours is a simple one too, but it's within a school of medicine, replacing a whole stack of knowledge-based exams with interpretive exams, so bringing the clinical environment and clinical tasks into the exam instead of testing knowledge.
Yep, brilliant. Okay, so that was sort of to get people's thinking primed around what's possible with digital exams, and now Mathew's going to further and structure some of that thinking for us.
Thanks. So as we're kind of been talking about, I've put up this slide in a few different roadshows around the place because some people, I think we've been driving fairly strongly in the room towards what the idea of authentic assessment and the idea of genuine tools of the trade in the mix when you're doing an exam. But I think there's sort of a word of warning out there that what's promised as an e-exam may not be an e-exam in the sense that we would like it to be an authentic form of assessment. So if you think about just writing, for example, how you go about writing and producing and demonstrating knowledge, a word processor is the tool of the trade, but it's not just a text box that you type text into. A word processor has so many more different features. There's spell checking, there's the ability to integrate different resources. So in thinking about what is a digitally relevant or digitally authentic environment for knowledge production or knowledge demonstration, then a text box is not really going to cut it, unfortunately. It will, of course, it has its uses, but my argument is that we need to go beyond just text boxes. Think about engineering, for example. What is the tools of the trade of engineers? Things like CAD software, mathematical modelling tools, etc. So, we should provide the access to the CAD software, and Gabby's examples, they have the ability to integrate software tools into their system. So I think, the focus around here is, okay, yes, we're interested in computerised assessment, but not computerised assessment just for the sake of computerising something and making more efficient, but also for the sake of how do we integrate the idea of authentic assessment into that environment. Now, yes, there will be a role for the more simple, lower level knowledge checking that we might have traditionally done on paper, and that gets converted into selected response questions and multiple choice, etc. It has its role, but if that's as far as we can go, we're not really doing our jobs properly, in my opinion. So the idea that we've been working on in our project is the idea of a phased implementation strategy. And for our work, we started at the beginning. We started by saying, right, what do you already do now? And now let's do it in a computer to get your toes in the water. And we did it in a way that didn't use any networks. So we could literally start off at a very small scale with almost no resources. It ran on the smell of an oily rag. but of course it won't scale until we get towards phase 3, where Gabby is already at and beyond in terms of their networked examination environment. So that's the sort of what we were driving at. And here's a diagram. Start off with a Word document, add a digital resource like a PDF file. So that might be for in the legal studies area. Okay, let's just put all the statutes or something, all the laws, relevant laws for an area, into a PDF file that's now searchable with Control F. You know, that's a lot better than thumbnail things around the edge of textbooks, right? So we're already getting a little bit towards. Now we can integrate multimedia content. We can integrate, you know, software tools. So there's an example there from a programming tool, CAD software, astronomy software. We can even use 3D virtual worlds environments. Ken mentioned that idea of using AR, VR. In fact, we have a very small project just starting that if you're going to Ascolite next week, you'll hear about our project playing with augmented reality as an e-exam integrated into our platform. So then, of course, you know, you're using things like CAD software, whatnot, and multiple languages. So this is what we started. So this was a couple of years ago when I was still at University of Queensland. We started using Word documents and had the academics develop their exams, and we used, you know, slightly different formatting, but it could be we gave the students a choice of handwriting or typing, because this is also a transition strategy to get people comfortable into the environment without having to have a big infrastructure behind it. Once you say, oh, we need networks and servers and all the rest of it, now you need a large institutional commitment to make this happen. I was a sort of a lowly lecturer, so, you know, had to start at the beginning. This is an example of an exam at Macquarie, run by our good friend here, Matt Bauer. This was, I guess, what you might call a toe-in-the-water exam, would you say? Again, it was Word document-centric. It was done during class times. I believe it was the students had to choose a particular tutorial, was that right, to show up to the EE exam? Yep, fixed time, fixed place. So you can see there's not many people in the room, but it's where you start, you know. Looking at Gabby's huge numbers, we think we're very jealous, but you have to start somewhere. Here's another one at University of Queensland. This was a language exam. Amy, you're in the back of the room. Amy, wave, hi. This was one of Amy's exams. In this particular exam, we did it so that there was a content on the left and translation or what have you on the right. But it's Word documents. You can format it however you like. Again, another one. Here's one from Andrew. Would you like to speak to this one, Andrew?
Yes, if you
Yeah, sure. Just quickly.
Well, I'll start off with the example in the middle. We got a bit of applause for the programming one. So some of the biggest companies in the world are based upon digital technologies. So you take Google, Microsoft and so on. And the Australian government has brought in the idea that programming should be taught in schools. That's really difficult for the students I train. They're a cusp generation. Well, they didn't learn programming in schools. So for them, to learn programming to the point where they can teach it is really hard. So we've got an agreement in Tasmania that in primary schools, all the students will be taught Scratch, this one in the middle here, and in high schools they'll be typing Python code. So we wanted to be able to say, yeah, the students who've done this unit can go out into schools and they know how to program in Scratch. And the only way you can do that, to be absolutely sure, is to do it in an exam. So we give them the Scratch environment on the USB stick and we say, this is the problem, we want you to design a Scratch program, and they don't submit an A, B or C from a multiple choice question. They create the Scratch code, they save the code onto the USB stick and it's uploaded to be marked. So we get the full program to look at. This example over here is just showing that we can put a genuine video of a student responding to a mathematical task, and we can get them to comment on the student's learning and upon the testing facility, the pedagogical aspects of it. And over on the far end there, we've got chemistry education. The idea is that our students should know what resources to take into the classroom. A lot of the resources that are used in classrooms go beyond the blocks, the Lego, the CO2-powered racing cars and so on. the books and so on, they should be able to assess software. So we give them a bit of software they've never seen in their life before, and we ask them, you know, how good is this pedagogically? Does it teach the concepts really well? We can actually get them to run that software in the exam, which would be really hard to do on paper. Okay, thank you.
Okay, not sure if that was a live video, was it?
I've got a shape here.
Yeah, there we go. Here's an example of a video prompt just for the heck of it.
I've got only half the shape made, and it's a symmetric shape, and that black line is the line of symmetry. Could you make the other half for me so we have symmetry?
Okay, so I think you get the idea of what's going on there. You have to watch it to the end? Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe you'd have them explain some of the theoretical concepts behind, you know, why she may or may not understand it, I would assume. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a shape.
Sorry. Okay, there's the scratch one again. So we also played with other kind of ways of doing things. I had a question from somebody, I think it might have been at RMIT, who wanted to, how can I make an easy automatic exam that didn't require a network? We first thought, we'll just use PDF files, PDF forms, because we'll be able to digitally collect them all. But then we thought, how are we going to get all the content out of the digital forms and into a database? Adobe wanted lots and lots of money for that. So we decided, no, let's just use what we've got. And we used a spreadsheet. This was actually an examination in Chinese language. So we tried, we tried it inside Monash. Scott Grant's in the room. This was our sort of halfway house between, you know, an offline exam and something that could be done a bit more digitally, a bit more automatically. I call it the poor man's LMS. We'll also talk about that one, Asklight, tomorrow. Here's something that's a lot more exciting, I would say, when you say, Andrew. This is a screenshot from a bunch of math software we've installed inside the platform as well. So you can select what kind of mathematical tools you would like. This is, again, still all running in the offline environment. It also now works in our online environment. But it's coming out of the local system, and you can use a Word document, or you could use a Moodle quiz in conjunction with this. So just as Gabby has shown some examples around this one, you know, it shows you can have a lot of rich tools that the students can access and be able to solve real problems in ways that they may have been taught during their lessons. Another example of a programming exam, Edith Cowan is also represented in the room. Wave. Yep, okay. So that was a Python programming exam. It was still done by a Word document, but then they produced their content in a Python programming environment. That's kind of a prettified version of it. We also did, of course, Moodle exams at Monash. Our Moodle project, under our national project, is a lot less mature than Gabby's wonderful system, but we use things like audio files. The other thing is that our system can run when the network goes down. So we need a network to begin with, but after that, network is optional, and it still has digital workflows available. We, of course, hope the network is there at the end, but if it's not, it doesn't matter. All the data is saved at multiple levels. So again, there's another example of a piece of software, in which case a digital dictionary translation tool that's sitting next to Moodle, where the student is able to access multiple pieces of software in conjunction with Moodle quizzes. There is actually some case studies floating around in your little satchels as well. But in the interest of time, I think we may move on. Matt, yes? Would you like to speak about the next bit?
Yeah. So, looks great, yeah. I mean, all the systems and ideas we're sort of seeing today, I think you'll agree that really is progressing towards that idea of authentic assessment. At the same time, there's a big difference between the moon and the finger pointing at the moon. And we've got some sort of like Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory talks about how actually amongst any teaching population you'll have innovators, or population generally, innovators, early adopters, an early majority, a big late majority, and a lot of laggards. We also have Piggy Ertman's famous work in education that talks about the first order and the second order barriers that often constrain technology innovation. So first order barriers are more of those external things like resources, hardware, software, training, support. But there's also these internal barriers that teachers have in terms of confidence, belief about student learning and how people will learn best, and the perceived value of technology in learning and teaching. There is just some people who will generally have a resistance to it. So what I'd like you to talk about in your groups again, using the same sort of idea as last time, just a couple of minutes in your group to discuss what you think, maybe if each person at the table thinks what the main barrier for institutional adoption of authentic assessment practices, and also the best way to overcome that barrier. So if you can just spend 2 minutes now talking, everyone shares an idea, and then another minute to pick the best one, and we'll fly around the room and just capture people's thoughts. Thanks. Okay, we're running short on time, so can you now pick the biggest barrier and also the way to overcome it, and you get 10 words to report in total. So be very efficient in how you describe. We ready here? Okay. Okay. Here we go, guys. We're on strict time limits. So we've got 5 minutes to do the whole room, 10 words per table. What do you see as the biggest barrier to overcome it, and what is the solution, do you think, for overcoming it? Let's start down here. Oh, hey, people, time out. Come on, shoppers. Shh, shh. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll start down at the front here.
Barrier time, solution provide resource.
Okay, that was excellent. We're ahead of schedule. Next table.
Barrier teacher engagement, and solution is institutional support.
Oh, institutional support goes to two for two. Next table.
Barrier was the perception academics have in regards to the value and confidence, and then around the same resources and workload. We didn't quite get to solution though.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next table.
We're along the same lines with the institution and perhaps the leadership direction.
Interesting, interesting. Yes, next table at the back there.
Yeah, we're along the same lines. Barrier, time, workload, technology. Solution, institutional support.
Wow, emerging as the leader. Next table.
I think the barrier we discussed most was the logistics, the skill set required, the operational implementation, and that what's required is institutional investment to lift everybody to what's needed.
Thank you very much. Next table.
Hi, so our barrier was resources, which includes time, money, all that sort of stuff, and institutional collaboration was our solution. So not just one university, because obviously we're all sort of looking at the same issues.
Yeah, good idea.
We said the barrier was inertia within the institution, and agents for change would be the way to go.
Nice angle on it.
Barrier is hidden implicit assumptions, and the answer would be challenging those assumptions if you could see them, which I think many we can't.
Right, interesting.
And bingo with this table, our barrier was time and the solution was more collaboration and stop reinventing the wheel.
Great.
I'd say the barrier was not having enough administrative support and manpower to help, and the solution would be money and training.
Great.
Yes, the other one was organisational deployment and not needing a computer science degree in order to actually put it to use internally. That was it.
Great. So, and really interesting how amongst all those different tables and institutions, the same sort of central themes were coming through around hours and resources and time to do it. And then the institutional support and various angles on that, and also a lot about the sort of perceptions of people is really key. And that idea I really like of collaboration coming through, and that's exactly what today is about. So wonderful to have everyone in the room, and hopefully we can make progress on that together. So I'll now hand over to Geoff.